Imagine entering a universe where a straightforward invitation turns into a night that rewrites all of desire's rules, where forbidden desires and friendship closeness coexist. This isn't simply a fiction, it's a voyage into the unknown where one choice has the power to disclose everything you believed you understood about connection. Before I describe the night that, if you've ever had desire blurring the boundaries of possibility, stop everything. Some moments are too powerful to keep quiet, so if you enjoy stories that push limits, hit subscribe. It all began with a straightforward request. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but James had a way of making everything sound irresistible. In addition, I had a long week and thought I could use a diversion. When I entered the elevator that led straight to his apartment, I had no idea that my entire world was about to change. James, my longtime friend, texted me about an impromptu get-together at his penthouse. Just a few drinks, some conversation, you'll love it. James greeted me at the door with a warm smile that was as endearing as ever. His hand on my back as he led me inside felt so effortlessly natural. He always knew how to make me feel like I belonged. "Perfect timing," he said, handing me a glass of whiskey with just the right amount of ice. The penthouse was gorgeous as always, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering city lights and the smooth hum of jazz filling the air. James was the epitome of sophistication, with a dark suit and an open collar that made you feel like you were in on a secret. Then I met Victor, who was leaning against the sleek marble bar. He didn't say much at first, but his composed manner made him even more fascinating. The four of us started a casual talk about rhythm, laughing, and the clinking of glasses. James kept us all laughing with his anecdotes, making him the life of the party. I couldn't deny the energy in the room. It wasn't just the whiskey warming me from the inside. Each of them seemed to be drawing me in their own way. At one point, the conversation took a playful turn. Victor threw in his own quips, his voice deep and growly, while Robert mostly listened and occasionally chimed in with these perfectly timed remarks that made you hang on to his every word. With a playful twinkle in his eye, James leaned forward and added, "All right," putting down his glass. "Let's make this interesting by playing a little truth game where there are no lies or holding backs." Victor smirked precisely and raised an eyebrow, saying, "Dangerous." James said, "I'll start. What's the most daring thing you've ever done?" The responses were hilarious. When Victor once sneaked into a concert, Robert revealed that he had taken an impromptu trip to Europe. When it was my turn, I laughed uncomfortably and took a sip of my drink. I don't think I've done anything particularly bold. The air in the room changed, charged with something I couldn't quite put my finger on, and Victor's smile grew. "You seem to have it in you." James leaned closer, "and we could change that tonight." Then James asked the question that changed everything. If you could spend the night with anyone here, who would it be? The intensity in their eyes told me they were waiting for an answer, but instead of making a decision, I found myself asking why not all three. I told myself it was a joke, but the way they looked at me after that made it obvious they were all thinking the same thing. My heart leaped as their eyes were fixed on me. James was the first to move, taking my glass and placing it on the table while stepping closer and brushing my hand. He said, "You always knew how to steal the spotlight." His voice was smooth and low, and his hand lingered on mine. When he tilted his head, his lips met mine in a slow, deliberate kiss that was warm, inviting, and just a little playful, as if he was testing the waters. When his other hand moved to the small of my back and pulled me in closer, I gasped. Then I could feel Victor behind me. He put his hands on my hips and gave me a firm but gentle touch. "Don't think you're getting all the attention," he whispered in my ear, before planting a series of kisses down the side of my neck. As they exchanged a knowing glance over my shoulder, James's hands slipped over my hips and Victor's warm palms grasped my waist, grounding me. Their touches were different but completely complementary, overwhelming my senses. When Robert reached out and traced a slow line from my collarbone to my jaw, his touch was firm but gentle, as if he wanted to relish the moment Victor's lips found my shoulder, and I could feel the contrast between the softness of his kiss and the scratch of his stubble. Robert was standing in front of me, his gaze steady with a mixture of admiration and desire. His fingertips confidently found my dress's zipper, and as he touched it, the fabric gave way and slipped down my body in a smooth whisper. For a brief moment, I stood, there with the cool air caressing my bare skin, but it was short-lived as James's hands skimmed the sides of my thighs, and his lips pressed warm, feathery kisses along the curve of my neck. "You're beautiful," he whispered in a low voice, and Robert moved closer, his hands sliding along my arms as his lips claimed mine once more. This time, his kiss was slower and deeper, weakening my knees. I reflexively leaned into him, my hands clutching his shoulders for support from behind. Victor chuckled softly as he guided me with his hands. They placed me onto the velvety cushions and whispered, "Let me make you comfortable, gentle but persistently toward the couch." His voice was full of promise. Victor knelt next to me, and I experienced an enticing mixture of surrender and eagerness. His big hands following the contour of my waist, his touch sending shivers down my spine. James stepped behind me, his hands sliding to the small of my back, his presence steady and grounding. Robert was at my side. He reached for my bra strap, his gaze never leaving mine, his fingertips grazing my flesh. He slipped it down gently, moving deliberately as if he wanted to enjoy every second. James leaned in from beneath his lips and murmured, "GR rang my ear, you're incredible." His voice was so quiet that it was almost a murmur. The final obstacle disappeared in a single fluid move as Victor's hands found the clasp. The sensation of their hands caressing me made me gasp. Each touch was careful and reverent, as if they were learning every inch of my skin. Robert gave me another kiss. Victor's touch was harder and more impatient, although his lips were sweet but persistent as his hands crept lower. James moved in a calming yet thrilling manner as his fingers traced patterns along my back. Victor's hands held my hips and his lips found my collarbone, guiding me onto his lap. His power was evident, and I felt a strong pull as he positioned me just where he wanted me. Robert's hands held me steady, and his intensely dark eyes found mine as he leaned in to kiss me. James shifted to the side, his hands stroking my thighs and his lips touching my neck as he muttered, "You're everything." I pictured them taking their time, each contributing a unique energy. Victor's self-assured power, Robert's gradual and consistent love, James's playful teasing. I was left speechless by the intensity of every touch, kiss, and murmured word. Robert leaned down and brushed his lips over my shoulder, while Victor's hands guided my motions with a tight yet loving hold. The night unfolded in a blur of movement and sensation, their touch, their words, and the way they worked together to keep me at the center of their focus. It wasn't just physical, it was an unspent connection, an unyielding energy that flowed between the four of us. Hours later, we lay tangled on the couch, the soft glow of the city lights washing over us. James's fingers interlaced with mine, his steady presence anchoring me as I gave myself over to the moment. And then it happened, a moment so raw, so all-encompassing, that left me gasping, my body trembling under their combined touch. With his arm casually stretched across me, Victor leaned back and breathed deeply and steadily. Robert was on the other side of me, his fingers idly drawing designs on my arm. He gave me a gentle smile that was equal parts satisfaction and adoration. I smiled, my chest still rising and falling in the aftershocks of everything that had just happened. James sat at the edge of the couch, his hand resting on my leg as he looked out at the skyline and said that breaking the silence was worth the wait. Victor laughed, his voice low and warm. I think we'd all agree on that. I quietly said, I don't think I've ever had a night like this. Robert gently kissed my temple and murmured, "You deserved it." His voice was so sincere that it made my heart hurt in the most wonderful manner. It was more than just passion. It was a moment that would last with me forever, a story I would replay in my head for years to come. Now it's your turn. Have you ever had a night that completely changed you? If so, share your most daring and vulnerable story in the comments section below. If this story spoke to you, hit the like button and hit subscribe. Let's continue these genuine, unfiltered conversations. Your tale could be the one that frees someone else.